Welcome to 15-Minute Discourse, where we're going to be plunging headfirst into the Uncanny Valley.
Yes, that unsettling feeling that we get from things that look almost human, but not quite.
Exactly. Like, have you ever seen like a creepy AI-generated influencer or a hyper-realistic robot that's just a little bit off?
Precisely. And you know, it's interesting, the term Uncanny Valley itself wasn't actually coined until 1978 by Jasia Reichardt when she was translating the work of Masahiro Mori, a Japanese robotics professor.
I did not know that. Mori is the one who kind of like spearheaded this back in 1970.
He proposed this thought experiment, like, would we actually like robots more the more human-like they became?
So he's basically saying like our comfort level with robots increases as they become more lifelike, but only up to a point.
Yes, like imagine climbing a mountain.
Okay.
You're enjoying the view as you ascend. You're getting closer to the peak, and the peak would be a real human. But then all of a sudden you encounter this dip before you reach the summit. And it's that sudden shift from familiarity to discomfort that really kind of, defines it.
So it's not just about something being ugly. It's more about this kind of jarring disconnect between what our brains expect to see and what we're actually seeing.
Yeah. It's like our brain's internal alarm bells are going off saying, hold on, something's not right here.
And we see this with all sorts of things, right? Not just robots.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about like early CGI characters in movies. Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within comes to mind.
Yeah.
The animation was groundbreaking for its time, but those characters were just a little too real, and it ended up being unsettling for a lot of viewers.
Totally. Or how about that Pixar short, Tin Toy?
Ah, yes.
That baby.
A classic example.
Still haunts my nightmares.
And more recently, we can't forget the cinematic masterpiece that was Cats.
Oh, Cats, oh God.
It definitely pushed the boundaries.
I think that whole movie just took up residence in the Uncanny Valley.
It really did. And, these pop culture examples really highlight how powerful this effect can be. Like, even when we know it's not real,
right,
it can still trigger this, like, primal sense of unease.
So we've established that the Uncanny Valley is a thing.
Yes.
It's everywhere. But why does it actually happen? What's going on in our brains when we see this stuff?
Well, there are a few different theories.
Okay.
But they all sort of revolve around how our brains process information and make sense of the world around us.
Hit me with the science.
Okay, so one prominent theory is called perceptual mismatch.
Okay.
And it suggests that our brains are constantly comparing what we see with what we expect to see.
Gotcha.
Based on our experiences with real humans.
So if a robot's movement is too jerky or their facial expressions are a little off, that creates a mismatch.
It creates a mismatch, and that mismatch creates a sense of cognitive dissonance.
Our brains are kind of struggling to reconcile the conflicting information.
Yeah.
And that leads to feelings of discomfort.
This does not compute.
Right. And then there's the categorization difficulty theory. This suggests that our brains like to categorize things as either human or non-human.
Makes sense.
But when something falls in between those categories, it creates this kind of ambiguity.
Oh, so like a mannequin that looks eerily lifelike, but it's obviously not a real person.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like our brains are stuck in this loop trying to figure out what it's looking at.
Right.
And that indecision can trigger that Uncanny Valley effect.
So we got these cognitive theories, but there's also the evolutionary angle, right?
Right. There could be some survival mechanism hardwired into us over millennia.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Spill the evolutionary tea.
One theory proposes that the Uncanny Valley is tied to mate selection. So our ancestors, who were better at detecting subtle signs of illness or genetic flaws
in potential mates, were more likely to produce healthy offspring.
So it's like a subconscious way of weeding out partners who might not be a good fit.
It's like this built-in warning system to help us avoid mating with someone who might compromise the health of our future children.
Okay, so we got mate selection.
Yes.
And then is there anything else?
And then there's the theory that the Uncanny Valley is linked to our fear of death and decay.
Okay, that took a dark turn.
Well, think about it. The things that often fall into the Uncanny Valley tend to resemble corpses or things that are disfigured or decaying.
Right, like zombie movies. They're almost human, but not quite.
Those images tap into our primal fear of mortality.
Right.
And that can trigger a visceral sense of revulsion.
So it's a manifestation of our anxieties about our own mortality.
It's possible.
Wow.
And there's also a theory that it's linked to our instinct to avoid disease.
So like protecting ourselves from pathogens.
Exactly. Think about it. Things that look almost human, but have imperfections or abnormalities, might subconsciously remind us of illness or infection.
Right.
So our ancestors who were better at avoiding those things were more likely to stay healthy and survive.
Right.
And that instinct to avoid disease might be what's triggering that uncanny valley effect in us today.
Interesting. So it's like mate selection, mortality, salience, pathogen avoidance.
Right.
It's like our brains are throwing everything they've got
at
this problem of what's safe and what's not.
And it's all happening on the subconscious level. You know, we're not even aware of these calculations that our brains are making.
Yeah, it is really fascinating how much goes on under the surface.
It really is. And you know, there's actually neurological evidence to support these evolutionary theories.
Like what?
So researchers have used EEG measurements to study brain activity when people are exposed to images of realistic humans, unrealistic humans, and things that fall into that uncanny valley.
And what have they found?
They found that our brains react differently to those things in the uncanny valley.
So there's a neurological basis for this.
It seems that way. Yeah. And this really suggests that there's something unique about our brain's response to these almost human but not quite entities.
So it's not just a feeling.
No.
It's like a measurable...
It's a measurable phenomenon.
Okay, so we've got all these theories about why the uncanny valley exists.
Yeah.
But is it really a universal experience? Does everybody feel the same way?
That's a great question. And it's one that researchers are still kind of exploring. There's definitely evidence to suggest that individual differences, cultural factors, and even, exposure to different kinds of imagery can all influence how we respond to these near-human entities.
So what might creep one person out might not even faze another person.
Exactly. And what's considered normal or attractive can vary widely between cultures. So what triggers the uncanny valley effect in one culture might not have the same impact in another.
So it's not just about the object itself.
No.
It's about the perceiver and their background.
Exactly. It's this complex interplay of factors.
And there are even some critics who say that the uncanny valley might not even be a distinct phenomenon at all, but just a result of us being hypersensitive to human faces.
Right, because we spend our whole lives looking at human faces. We're incredibly attuned to even the slightest deviations from the norm. So any imperfection in a near-human entity is going to stand out like a sore thumb.
So it's not that there's something inherently creepy about these things.
No.
It's that our brains are just super sensitive to anything that looks a little bit off.
That's one way to look at it. And on the flip side, there's the argument that good design and attention to detail can potentially mitigate the uncanny valley effect.
So if we create human-like entities that are really convincing, maybe we can avoid that feeling of unease.
That's the hope. And there are definitely examples of CGI characters and robots that have managed to achieve a high level of realism without triggering that uncanny valley.
So it's not an insurmountable challenge.
Not necessarily. But it does require a deep understanding of human perception and a meticulous attention to detail.
So we've talked about what the uncanny valley is, why it exists, the science behind it, the arguments for and against it. But why does any of this matter?
That's the big question.
Yeah, what are the implications of the uncanny valley for our lives and for the future?
I think the answer is that the uncanny valley has implications for a wide range of fields, including robotics, animation, virtual reality design, even our understanding of human consciousness.
That's a lot to unpack. Let's start with robotics. How does the uncanny valley affect the development of robots?
Well, as we've discussed, people tend to react negatively to robots that look almost but not quite human. So for roboticists who are designing robots for social interaction, understanding and navigating the uncanny valley is absolutely crucial.
So if you want to create a robot that people will feel comfortable interacting with, you need to make sure it doesn't look too creepy.
Exactly. And it's not just about avoiding creepiness. It's also about creating robots that can evoke positive emotional responses.
So like robots that can make us feel happy or comforted.
Precisely. And that's a huge challenge. It requires a deep understanding of human psychology and a mastery of these subtle nonverbal cues.
It's like trying to create a robot that can read our minds.
In a way, it is, and the stakes are high. If we can create robots that can truly connect with us on an emotional level, it could revolutionize fields like healthcare education, even companionship.
But it also sounds incredibly difficult.
It is, but researchers are making progress. They're developing robots with more expressive faces, more nuanced movements, and even the ability to detect and respond to human emotions.
Wow. So maybe someday we'll have robots that we can not only tolerate, but actually enjoy being around.
That's the goal, and I think it's a goal worth striving for. But
Yeah.
it's not just about robots.
Okay.
The Uncanny Valley also has implications for animation.
Right. We talked about those creepy CGI characters. How does that affect the way animated films are made?
Well, just like with robots, animators need to be aware of the Uncanny Valley if they're creating characters that are meant to be realistic.
So they need to make sure those characters don't look too human-like.
It's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
It's not about avoiding realism altogether. It's about finding that sweet spot where the characters are believable
Gotcha.
and engaging without triggering that sense of unease.
So it's a delicate balance.
It really is.
Yeah.
And as technology advances and we're able to create more and more realistic characters, that challenge of avoiding the Uncanny Valley becomes even greater.
And what about virtual reality?
Well, virtual reality is all about creating immersive experiences. And if you're creating a virtual world, it's populated by human-like avatars, you need to be very careful about how those avatars look and move.
Because if they fall into the uncanny valley, it could ruin the whole experience.
Exactly. Instead of feeling immersed in the virtual world, you might feel repelled by it.
Right.
And that's the last thing you want in a VR experience.
So the uncanny valley is something that VR developers should take seriously.
And the same goes for any field that involves creating artificial humans or characters. Whether it's for entertainment education or research, the uncanny valley is a factor that needs to be considered.
So the uncanny valley has clear implications for technology.
It does.
But you also mentioned that it has implications for our understanding of human consciousness.
Right.
How so?
Well, the uncanny valley forces us to confront the question of what it means to be human.
Okay.
What are the essential qualities that make us human?
Right.
What separates us from machines?
Those are big questions.
They are. And the uncanny valley provides this unique window into how our brains perceive and categorize the world. By studying our reactions to things in the uncanny valley, we can learn more about the boundaries of human perception and the nature of our own consciousness.
So the uncanny valley isn't just a technological challenge, it's also a philosophical one.
Exactly. It's a challenge that forces us to grapple with some of the most fundamental questions about what it means to be human.
So the uncanny valley, it's this weird, creepy phenomenon that's also incredibly revealing about how our brains work and what makes us human. And as we continue to develop more technologies that blur the line between human and machine, the uncanny valley is only going to become more relevant.
Absolutely. It's a concept that's going to stay with us for a long time to come.
It is. And I think it's something we need to be mindful of
I agree.
as we venture further into this uncharted territory. So what are we doing to navigate this uncanny valley? Are researchers actively working on ways to mitigate this effect?
Absolutely. There's a lot of research being done on how to create robots and AI that can evoke those positive responses and avoid that uncanny valley effect.
Okay, good.
One approach is to focus on perfecting specific aspects of human likeness rather than trying to create a completely realistic replica all at once.
So like instead of aiming for a perfect android
Right.
that can do it all,
Yeah.
maybe start with something simpler.
Yeah, maybe focus on perfecting the movement of the eyes or the subtlety of facial expressions.
Because those are things that we as humans are really attuned to.
Exactly. Even small improvements in those areas can make a big difference in how we perceive a robot or a virtual character.
Right.
And it can help to avoid that creepy feeling.
For sure. Another approach, I think, would be to focus on the emotional intelligence of robots and AI, teaching them to recognize and respond to human emotions.
That's right. If a robot can understand that we're feeling sad or anxious, it can adjust its behavior accordingly.
And that would make robots feel so much more relatable.
Exactly. And it would make us more likely to trust and accept them.
Yeah, and I think the visual appearance of a robot, virtual character,
Huge role.
plays a huge role in whether or not it triggers that uncanny valley.
Designers are exploring ways to create these human-like entities that are aesthetically pleasing without being too realistic.
So maybe incorporating stylistic elements or slightly exaggerating certain features.
It's all about finding that balance between realism and stylization.
Yeah, that is a really interesting challenge. It's like trying to crack the code of human perception.
And the key is to remember that the uncanny valley isn't a fixed point.
What do you mean?
It's a spectrum.
Okay.
So what one person finds creepy, another person might find endearing.
Right. Different people, different strokes.
Exactly. So the goal isn't necessarily to create something that everyone will find universally appealing, but rather to create something that's engaging
Yeah.
and relatable to a specific audience, and to be mindful of the context
Right.
in which the technology will be used.
So a robot that's designed to work in a hospital might need to have a different look and feel
Exactly.
than a robot that's designed to be a companion.
Context is everything.
So the Uncanny Valley is this constantly evolving challenge that we're learning more about as we go.
Yeah, it's a dynamic interplay between technology,
Mm-hmm.
design, and human perception.
And it speaks to our ability to adapt and evolve as humans.
I agree. We're constantly recalibrating our sense of what's normal and what's not.
Right.
And the Uncanny Valley is a reminder that even as we create these sophisticated technologies, we're still deeply attuned to the subtleties of human nature.
It's like this dance between what we create
It is.
and who we are.
Beautifully put.
So I guess the takeaway here is that the Uncanny Valley is not something to be feared, but something to be understood and navigated.
Absolutely. As we continue to explore the possibilities of artificial intelligence and human-like technologies, the Uncanny Valley will continue to be a fascinating and important area of research.
So the Uncanny Valley, it's more than just a creepy feeling.
It's a window into the human mind.
It's a challenge that's pushing us to create better, more engaging, more human-centered technologies.
And ultimately, it's a reminder that even as we strive to create things that are almost human, there's something special and irreplaceable about the real thing.
So the next time you encounter something that gives you that Uncanny Valley feeling, remember that it's not just a glitch in the matrix. It's a sign that your brain is working overtime, trying to make sense of this amazing, complex world that we live in.
Well said.
Yeah, it really makes you appreciate the complexity of human perception and how much we take for granted.
It does. It's interesting to think about how technology is actually pushing us to better understand ourselves.
Oh, totally. I see what you mean. The more we try to replicate human intelligence and behavior, the more we realize just how much we don't know.
It's like holding up a mirror to our own humanity and seeing it reflected back in this kind of distorted way.
Yeah, and that distortion can be both unsettling but also illuminating.
It forces us to ask these big questions like what makes us human?
Right.
What are the qualities that we value most in ourselves and in others?
It's almost like the Uncanny Valley is a challenge, a provocation to think more deeply about what it means to be alive and conscious.
I like that way of putting it. Yeah, it's a challenge to our assumptions about the world and about ourselves.
So how do we move forward? As technology continues to advance, are we just doomed to be forever creeped out by these things?
I don't think so. I think as we learn more about the science behind the Uncanny Valley, be better equipped to navigate it.
So it's not about eliminating the Uncanny Valley altogether. It's about understanding it and working with it.
Precisely. Finding that sweet spot where technology can enhance our lives without triggering those primal fears and anxieties.
So what are some of the things that researchers and designers are doing to mitigate the Uncanny Valley effect?
Well, as we touched on earlier, one approach is to focus on perfecting those specific aspects of human likeness rather than trying to create a perfect replica all at once.
So instead of going for a fully realistic android that can do everything, maybe focus on getting the eyes right, or the subtle nuances of facial expression.
Exactly, because those are the things that we as humans are most sensitive to. Even small improvements in those areas can make a big difference in how we perceive a robot or a virtual character.
It's like the difference between a creepy doll and a beloved teddy bear, all in the details.
It is, and those details matter. They influence our emotional response to these entities.
So it's not just about making things look human. It's about making them feel human.
Right, creating a sense of empathy and connection, something that's not technically alive.
And that brings us to emotional intelligence in robots and AI.
Yes.
Is it even possible to create machines that can truly understand human emotions and respond to them?
It's definitely a challenge, but researchers are making progress in areas like affective computing, which is all about developing systems that can recognize, interpret, and even simulate human emotions.
So like a robot that can sense that you're feeling down and then respond with a comforting gesture or a kind word.
Exactly. That kind of emotional intelligence could be transformative in fields like healthcare, where robots could provide companionship and support to patients who are feeling isolated or lonely.
Or even in education, like an AI tutor that could adapt to a student's emotional needs.
The possibilities are really exciting.
They are.
And as we develop these more emotionally intelligent machines, we might find that our fear of the Uncanny Valley starts to fade.
because we'll see these machines not as creepy imposters, but as companions and collaborators.
And that shift in perception could pave the way for a more harmonious future. Humans and technology can coexist and even thrive together.
So it's not about humans versus machines.
No.
It's about humans with machines.
Exactly. And the Uncanny Valley might just be a stepping stone on that journey, you know? A challenge that forces us to confront our fears and ultimately embrace a more expansive view of what it means to be human.
Really hopeful way of looking at it.
Yeah.
It makes me think about the role of like art and creativity in all of this.
That's an interesting point because art has always been a way for humans to explore those boundaries of perception
Yeah.
and to make sense of the world around us.
So maybe artists and designers can help us to see the beauty and the potential
Absolutely.
in things that we might initially find strange or unsettling.
They can help us to reframe our understanding of the Uncanny Valley and to see it not as a threat, but as an opportunity for creative expression.
I love that because ultimately the Uncanny Valley is a reflection of our own humanness, right?
It is.
Like it's a reminder of how complex and often contradictory our own minds are.
And by embracing that complexity, we might unlock new possibilities for human-technology interaction.
So the next time you see something that gives you that Uncanny Valley feeling,
Yeah.
don't shy away from it.
Yeah.
Lean into it.
Explore that feeling of
Yeah.
unease and ask yourself, what is it about this that makes me uncomfortable?
What does this reveal about my own perceptions and biases?
Because in that discomfort, there might be some real insight,
There
a
might.
new understanding of ourselves and our place in the world.
And who knows, maybe that discomfort will even inspire us to create something new,
Yeah.
something beautiful that transcends the Uncanny Valley altogether.
It's like turning a fear into a source of inspiration.
That's what human ingenuity is all about, right?
Yeah.
Taking those things that challenge us and transforming them into opportunities for growth and innovation.
So the Uncanny Valley might not be a destination,
No.
but a journey.
A journey of self-discovery and technological advancement.
And as we go on that journey together, we might find that the Uncanny Valley leads us to a place of greater understanding and connection.
A place where those boundaries between human and machine become blurred. Not in a way that's creepy or unsettling, but in a way that expands our horizons and enriches our lives.
And it's a challenge to us to create a future where technology serves humanity,
Yes.
not the other way around.
Well said. It's a reminder that like we're still really in the early stages of all this
Yeah.
technological innovation.
Yeah, and the most exciting discoveries are yet to come.
So the Uncanny Valley, it's not something to be afraid of.
No.
It's something to be explored, to be questioned,
Yeah.
to be pushed beyond.
It's a challenge that's forcing us to evolve, to adapt, to rethink what's possible.
And in doing so, we might actually unlock a future where technology makes us more human
Yes.
instead of less.
A future where that line between human and machine isn't a source of fear, but a source of wonder.
I think that's a perfect place to leave it.
It is.
So to our listeners out there, the next time you encounter something that gives you that Uncanny Valley feeling,
Uh-huh.
don't turn away. Embrace the discomfort.
Ask yourself, what is it about this experience that makes you feel uneasy? What does it reveal about your own perceptions and expectations?
Because in that exploration, you might actually discover something really profound about yourself and about the world we live in.
And remember, the Uncanny Valley is not a fixed point. It's a spectrum, a constantly shifting landscape that we're all navigating together.
So let's keep exploring. Let's keep questioning.
They keep pushing the boundaries
Yeah.
of what's possible.
Because at the end of the day, the future of technology and the future of humanity are kind of inextricably intertwined.
They are.
And that's your 15-minute discourse on the Uncanny Valley.
A deep dive into the strange and fascinating world of almost but not quite human.
If you enjoyed this exploration of the Uncanny Valley, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the world around us.
We'll see you next time.